Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never saw the knife aimed at your back? Amanda thought Claire was her closest friend for 15 years. They'd moved to Riverside together after college, built their lives in this small town side by side, and supported each other through every milestone. You first met Claire at orientation, and she immediately took you under her wing. She introduced you to everyone who mattered in Riverside, helped you land volunteer positions, and made you feel like you belonged in this community that could be cold to outsiders. For over a decade, you shared everything with Claire. Your dreams of starting a literacy nonprofit, your struggles with your family, your hopes for the community garden project. She was always there, always listening, always so encouraging. You started noticing small things about 3 years ago. Opportunities you'd mentioned to Claire would somehow go to other people. Committee positions you'd expressed interest in would be filled before you could apply. At first, you blamed yourself. Maybe you weren't qualified enough, or maybe the timing was just bad. Claire was always so sympathetic when you'd share your disappointments, always ready with an explanation that made sense. Then you started hearing whispers. Someone mentioned you seemed unreliable at a town meeting. Another person said they'd heard you were difficult to work with. These were things you'd never been called before in your life. You confronted Claire about the rumors, and she seemed shocked and supportive. She promised to defend you and said people were probably just jealous. You believed her, because why wouldn't you? She was your best friend. The breakthrough came 6 months ago at a community fundraiser. You'd stepped away to take a call, but you forgot your phone at your table. When you came back early, you heard Claire talking to Marcus, the foundation board president. You stayed out of sight as Claire told Marcus that you'd been struggling with personal issues and might not be reliable for the literacy program grant you'd both discussed. She suggested she should take the lead instead, for the good of the project. Your stomach dropped as you realized what had been happening. Every failure, every missed opportunity, every damaged relationship in this community could be traced back to Claire's quiet poison dripped into the right ears. You wanted to scream, to confront her right there, but something stopped you. Instead, you started paying attention. You began documenting every conversation, every timeline, every inconsistency in Claire's stories. Over the next few months, you discovered the depth of Claire's betrayal. The literacy nonprofit you'd dreamed up together, she'd pitched it as her own idea and was being profiled in the local paper for it. The community garden you'd designed, your name had been carefully edited out of all proposals. You learned from Elena, a council member, that Claire had been positioning herself as Riverside's rising star for years, and she'd built that reputation partly by making you look incompetent. Every time you mentioned wanting something, Claire would quietly sabotage you, then swoop in to claim it herself. But here's what Claire didn't know. Elena had been watching her too, growing suspicious of how Claire's success always seemed to coincide with someone else's failure. When you finally opened up to Elena, she wasn't surprised at all. Elena told you something crucial. The annual Riverside Charity Gala was coming up in 8 weeks. It was the town's biggest event, where major donors, community leaders, and grant committees all gathered. Claire was set to receive the Community Champion Award. You and Elena hatched a plan, not revenge exactly, but accountability. You would let Claire's own words expose her. You started recording your conversations with her, keeping everything legal and documented. In those conversations, you'd casually mention other people in the community, and like clockwork, Claire would share her concerns about them. She talked about how Sarah was too emotional for leadership, how David probably had financial problems, how Jennifer's marriage issues made her unreliable. You documented everything Claire had claimed credit for that wasn't hers. You tracked down original emails and proposals with your name on them. You collected testimonies from people who'd been confused about why you'd allegedly declined opportunities you'd actually never been offered. The pattern was clear. Claire had spent years systematically stealing ideas, blocking opportunities, and spreading subtle rumors about anyone she saw as competition, especially you. She'd built her perfect reputation on the ruins of other people's chances. 3 weeks before the gala, you did something Claire never expected. You nominated yourself for the Community Service Recognition, a smaller award presented the same night. You included testimonies from the people you'd quietly helped for years, the work Claire never knew about because you'd stopped telling her anything months ago. You also reached out to other people you suspected Claire had sabotaged. Turns out, you weren't alone. 4 other community members had experienced the same pattern of stolen ideas and damaged reputations, all with Claire at the center. The night of the gala arrived. You walked in wearing your elegant navy dress, head held high. Claire spotted you immediately and rushed over with her practiced smile, surprised you'd decided to come after you'd been so busy lately. You were friendly, warm even. Claire had no idea that in your small evening clutch, you carried a USB drive with documentation of everything. Elena had arranged for you to make a brief presentation before the awards ceremony, ostensibly about community collaboration. As dinner was served, you watched Claire work the room. She was brilliant at it, you had to admit. Charming, attentive, always saying exactly what people wanted to hear. She truly believed she'd gotten away with everything. When it was time for your presentation, you took the stage. You started by talking about how community success requires trust, collaboration, and giving credit where it's due. The audience nodded along, expecting a feel-good speech. Then you showed a slide. It was your original proposal for the literacy nonprofit, dated 2 years before Claire's version, with your name and signature clearly visible. You saw Claire's face go pale in the audience. You calmly explained how ideas are the foundation of community work, and how important it is to acknowledge originators. You showed 3 more examples of projects with similar patterns, never mentioning Claire's name, but the evidence spoke for itself. Then came the retention moment that changed everything. You played a recording. Claire's voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear, talking about how you were unreliable and had personal issues that made you unsuitable for leadership. The same phrases others had mysteriously heard about themselves. You followed it with a montage. Screenshots of messages where Claire had claimed sole credit for collaborative work. Testimonies from 4 other community members describing identical patterns of sabotage. A timeline showing how opportunities disappeared after private conversations with Claire. The room was silent. You concluded by saying that real community champions lift others up rather than tearing them down in private. You thanked Elena and others who'd helped uncover this pattern, and you sat down. Claire stood up, face flushed, and stammered something about misunderstandings and context. But Marcus, the foundation president, had already risen from the head table. He asked Claire to step outside for a conversation with the board. The Community Champion Award was quietly withdrawn. Claire left the gala early, her perfect reputation shattered in 15 minutes of truth. By the next morning, she'd resigned from her positions on 3 committees and 2 nonprofit boards. You received the community service recognition that night, but more importantly, you received apologies from dozens of people who'd believed Claire's whispers. They'd been manipulated too, and they hadn't known the truth. In the weeks that followed, 3 of Claire's claimed projects were reassessed, and proper credit was restored to their actual creators. The literacy nonprofit you'd conceived was renamed to acknowledge your founding vision. Claire moved to a different town 3 months later. You heard she got a job in a city where nobody knew her history. You felt no satisfaction in her leaving, just relief that the truth had finally come to light. Elena later told you that 2 other people had come forward after your presentation with similar stories about Claire from years before. The pattern had been there all along, but everyone had suffered in isolation, never comparing notes until you brought it into the open. You didn't destroy Claire out of spite. You simply refused to let her continue destroying others with lies. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but just refusing to stay silent while someone hurts people under the cover of friendship. Today, you're thriving in Riverside. Your reputation is stronger than ever, built on actual work rather than stolen credit. You've learned that real friends celebrate your success rather than secretly undermining it. Has someone in your life ever taken credit for your ideas or quietly sabotaged your opportunities?